and it's not wrong. It's someone's ideas. Um, Use them if they're useful, throw them away otherwise. Ultimately, this work is about trusting yourself. No one else's words, no one else's thoughts, but trusting you and yourself. Because that's where real peace comes from. When I trust, and not my mind that's driven by my ego or my fears, or my heart that's driven by its desires and hates, but my gut, my that small quiet knowing that we all have access to, and that's what we tap into when we sit, when we get quiet. We quiet the reasoning mind, which says do this, don't do that, which is kind of infiltrated with, our parents and our societies and our own fears and obsessions and desires, and getting into the quiet not knowing, which somehow always knows what we need or want. But with all that said, don't believe it. Like, this work is really about trusting yourself, not someone else's words. These words might point to it, and if that's helpful, great. But again, find out for yourself. So, sorry about all of my scribbles around it. Let's start up here. Yeah, there we go. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet, mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. Okay, so let me break this down. The Tao that can be told. The Tao is translated technically as the way, right? Like the way that the water falls, the way the wind blows, the way life just, the way the earth spins, and, the galaxies move around, et cetera, et cetera. Also could be translated as God, the universe, the flying spaghetti monster. This rock in front of me is the Tao. I'm the Tao, you're the Tao. We're all the Tao, right? We keep the word Tao in these translations because there's pretty much no Western idea around it. Like, I have an idea around God or the universe or the rock or myself. But the word Tao has no meaning in my psyche, hence why we keep that word. Because it kind of keeps us from naming, which is what this whole thing is about, right? The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. This is saying the Kirsten, the rock, the universe, the flying spaghetti monster that can be talked about is not the eternal Kirsten, rock, universe, God, flying spaghetti monster. Then it gets a little more specific. The name that can be named, the Kirsten, the rock, the backpack, the book, is not the eternal name. So what this is essentially saying is that the second we talk about something or name something, we've kind of locked it in the past, right? The eternal is what keeps moving and changing. I mean, this river is such a great example of that. It's one river. You guys have all heard about this. So it's one little stream, but it's never the same for a millisecond. It's constantly moving and changing. And even if it were frozen solid, there's still movement there. You just can't see it, right, with the naked eye. Everything is movement. If I try to name it or talk about it, I've missed its current reality. And if you think about it, all of your thoughts are of the past. Anything you think is old information. It's not what's happening now. Even what I see is technically old, right? Like, we know with vision, there's a refractory period, and the speed of light and all these things. There's a time bias there. It might be very minuscule, but what I'm seeing is technically the past. We look up in the sky and we see stars. We know that they're like billions of years old, only because science has figured out that what we're seeing is a memory. We're seeing the past, we're thinking the past, we're hearing the past, right? You go to an outdoor movie and you notice there's a slight delay between the sound and the visuals. That's because everything is past and it's all coming to us in a different time fractal, right? So the second you talk about something or name something, you're in the past. You're no longer with what actually is, right? And, you know, I think a rock is a good one to look at, right? If I name it rock, right, I can't see the mineral, and I mean, if you go in here, you can kind of like see that there's all sorts of stuff happening in here, right? You know, we mine for these different minerals. I can't see the minerals, salts, and whatever else might be in here. And I can't see its future as sand or fertilizer, or I don't even know what else it can be, right? I'm locked in this idea of what it is, and the very doing so limits my perception of it, right? It's no longer eternal, because this rock is literally eternal, right? Every atom, everything that's in here, you know, we know from like Carl Sagan and physics, is from some old dead star a few billion years back, right? Even once our Earth implodes, explodes, turns to dust because our sun is imploding or exploding, every atom of this rock will still remain, but it'll just have changed form. The atoms, the energy are eternal. What I see now is the past. So coming back to this, the Tao that can be talked about is not the eternal Tao, because the second I talk about it, I put it in the past and I'm not moving on with it. The name that can be named is not the eternal name, because again, it's in the past. Now, this sounds wonderful in a lot of ways, but it's also quite practical. When you think about the people or the problems or even the opportunities in your life, the second we name them, we've stuck them in the past. We've limited them to our essentially limited perspective, right? If I name Liz, or if Liz names me Kirsten, she has an idea of me and I have an idea of her, but that's not all of her. This is how naming is actually the block to intimacy. Intimacy either with another person, with a rock, with a river, with my problem, with my opportunity. The naming limits. So then it goes on to say, the unnameable is eternally real. When I'm not stuck in the names that my mind has put on things. Remember, all names are just language. Language is a tool, but it's not reality, right? The unnameable is eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. So quite literally, right? I name leaf, I name rock, I name river, I name book, I name sunglasses, I name leg. It separates, right? Naming is what separates. But if you were to go to the International Space Station and look back at the Earth, it's one thing, right? It's one rock, essentially, right? All things are in it, all things come from it and return to it. Okay. So naming is separating, makes things particular. And the second I name them, I feel separate from them. So then, you know, I can't see that me and the sunglasses are all of one Earth. I can't see that anymore. I think it's a little bit easier to think of this with like water or an ocean, right? Waves, they're each unique formations that come from the ocean and return to the ocean. And while each wave is its own unique thing, it's always the ocean. Right? It's always the ocean. Every wave is the ocean. But for a time being, it's its own separate, unique expression of the ocean, for lack of a better word, an expression of the wind and everything else. We are waves of the ocean of Earth. Each an expression that comes from and returns to the Earth.